2030.
Saudi Arabia, the point of investment fund,
It's a
there's
big
a lot of
vision.
excitement
This
around
transformational
NEOM specifically.
change. Every aspect of the kingdom, economic, social, cultural, religious.
The 2030.
This is the 2030.
Yalla.
This is the 2030 episode 41. Dr. Hanaa, hello. Nice to see you.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well here in Riyadh in my new, more permanent apartment. Thank goodness. Yeah, doing well. We've got a really great conversation this week with Ghada AlMuhanna Abu Khail, who joins us from Berlin, but she just spent some time actually with you in Riyadh, which I found out in the conversation. And we are going to be talking about the Riyadh Metro, which is now up and running, 6 lines, is fully operational. All of us have now ridden it. So we are going to be talking about first reactions to the Metro, some about what it's like and how it may impact this terrific city in which I'm living now. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think the thing that's great about Ghada, who is a visual anthropologist, is that she's, thinking about the human element of kind of tech and transportation and all of these things that are kind of wrapped up in this new transportation network. And so just how this is going to transform society in different ways from an anthropological point of view. And I love that instead of just talking about like where the metro goes, we're really picking apart the social impact that having a metro in a city may have on the residents and visitors to Riyadh. So
yeah, totally. This is cool. And we got a ton of feedback on our like pre-opening or like when it opened segment on the metro. And so this is kind of like a cool follow-up to that now that it's operational. And a lot of people are riding it. I don't know if we really mentioned that in the conversation, but people are like taking it. Parking lots around stations are totally full during the day. So people are riding it, people are using it, and it's awesome. So we'll just get to that in a little bit. Feedback on YouTube. And actually what we're going to do today is we don't get a ton of negative feedback, but this feedback is from Columbush2, who commented on one of our videos about Saudi Arabia's PIF disrupting boxing. He says, dirty sports washing is what this is, end quote. Yeah, so like, again, we don't get a ton of negative feedback. I thought we might try it out. I think what's interesting about this comment is it's an accusation that actually I see all the time when it comes to Saudi Arabia sports stuff. And it's the type of thing where it's like now it's like a standard thing to mention in Western media, right? Reuters, AP, New York Times, anything involving Saudi Arabia and sports, they accuse Saudi Arabia of sports washing. And that's, first of all, it's a term that I think doesn't quite apply to what Saudi Arabia is doing. But I think I'll let His Royal Highness the Crown Prince provide the retort, because he was asked about this in his famous now Fox News interview with Brett Baier about sports washing. And he says, quote, if sport washing is going to increase my GDP by way of 1%, then I will continue doing sport washing. Simply said, I don't care. I'm aiming for another 1.5%. So call it whatever you want. We're going to get that 1.5%. And I think in that answer, what he's saying is that that's actually just completely not the point of what we're doing. We're trying to diversify our economy. We're trying to grow tourism. And part of that is having global sporting events, including, by the way, the World Cup in 2034 and many other international matches, fights, whatever it is. This is about the economy. It's the economy, stupid, as James Carville once said. And so anybody out there that thinks, hey, like this is a serious accusation, it's really not. I kind of don't get it. I'll let you react as well. We don't get a lot of negative feedback. I think this is kind of interesting.
So the thing about sports washing, I mean, there's so many things, but it is pretty standard. This is exactly what everybody says when you talk about sports in Saudi Arabia, sports washing. And like you said, what does it really mean? I mean, the idea is that we're trying to hide everything that's bad in Saudi Arabia by promoting just the good stuff that is related to sports. And I think that we forget that there is a lot of good in Saudi Arabia, and so I think the idea of using sports to, hide is ridiculous. There's 34 million people that live in Saudi Arabia, more than that. And they are, people that go to bed, wake up, go to work, go to school, and want to be just taken seriously as people that have the right to live in the world. And I think that when you just kind of throw a blanket statement like it's sports washing, you're forgetting that there are humans on the other side of that are working really hard to develop this entire ecosystem, right? They're working to build the industry, and they're working to train, and they are then also benefiting from the promotion of sports within the country. And there's a lot of really, really hard work that goes into this that is basically reduced to nothing when you just use a term like sports washing and just disregard all of the incredible people that are working on building this new industry. And by the way, there's so much positive energy in Saudi Arabia. If it weren't for places like Saudi Arabia, a lot of these sports would probably not even, kind of thrive in the way that they are. And so I think that we need to give a little bit more credit to the hard work that's done in the kingdom.
Look, there are maybe 10 upsides for Saudi Arabia to be investing in sports and developing the ecosystem, as you note. One of them is the health of its citizens, right? If you have a vibrant sports sort of ecosystem built, then children and adults will get more into fitness.
Absolutely.
You have but one of those reasons, probably the biggest reason, is the one that His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, mentioned, which is
economy.
They're working to diversify their economy. They need to make money in ways that aren't related to oil, minerals, etc. And this is one way in which you can do it. It's also one of those, sectors, you could call it, that connects to many others, including tourism, which is another priority. If you have really cool sporting events, you have people coming in to see them. And what I just really, it makes me not understand the criticism is that the criticism is essentially you're trying to cover up something by using sports to cover that up. And actually the strategy is, if anything, to use sports to demonstrate how much Saudi Arabia has changed. You're Saudi. I'm here right now. I can just tell you with all honesty, it is so different than it was last year. It is a complete 180 from what it was before 2015, 2016. My first visit here was 2008. It's like a different country. Saudi Arabia is proud of that. They should be, of all the cool things that are happening here, all the changes and the advancements for women, with 45% of the private sector now employing women. It's just the changes and the reforms, you couldn't list them in one podcast show or 50 podcast shows because it's in every industry. They're trying to show the world their new, right? And their new self is more in alignment with the world. That is not a bad thing. That is not sports washing. But yes, it does come down to the bottom line. We're talking about, he said 1.5% of GDP. It could be much larger than that eventually, especially now that the World Cup has been confirmed. You will have a ton of sports generates so much money. The NFL alone, and it just generates a ton of money, and that's part of it. But there are many other reasons too. It is exceptionally ignorant when I hear people say that or I read it in the news. It's like the eye rolling thing where you're like, I've got to skip this paragraph because it just makes it discredits the whole thing. Yeah. But we do welcome feedback of all stripes, positive and negative. We will take on the negative if we disagree, and there's some negative things to say, but this is not a valid argument. In my opinion.
There is negative things to say about everybody, every country, every place in the world. Let's not pretend here that everybody's perfect and there's problems that Saudi Arabia has to hide behind Neymar to, avoid. That's ridiculous.
As if that would work.
It doesn't work.
Come on.
But actually, what's exciting is that there is now an incredible new football league that the whole world can watch, which is super, super engaging and fun. And, I see kids here in London wearing, Nasser jerseys and Hilal jerseys, and that makes me happy. I love that Saudi Arabia, like you said, now has an image that isn't the hidden image, which we, if anything, in the past, were very, very private in a way that nobody knew anything about Saudi Arabia. So they expect that people didn't like sports and didn't play sports and didn't enjoy entertainment and didn't like, watching fights. And it just wasn't necessarily on offer, but also people did engage and consume and they were part of the global economy to begin with. You just didn't really know much about it. And so it is changing. It's transforming so rapidly. But I really am frustrated when people just discount the work that goes into it. People in Saudi Arabia are not just passively sitting down, waiting for this kind of transformation to happen. People are working tirelessly to diversify the economy, to make sure that it is sustainable for the very large youth population that exists within the country, that are the energy and the excited kind of future of the kingdom. And I especially with sports, it's a no-brainer. You have 60% of the population under age 30. Like, we need people to be healthy, entertained, excited, and energized. And yeah, I mean, it's not about you.
It's not about you. Before we get into our conversation with Ghada, actually, Dr. Hanaa, if it's okay with you, we're way behind on shout outs. I have 2 to give this week, and I don't want to forget them at the end of the show. Can we do them now?
Let's
Is that
do
cool?
it. Yeah.
Okay, shout out number 1. I just was going to do it anyways. If you said no, I was just going to keep going. Shout out number 1, Adam Jones from Redesign Health. I met Adam at the Ritz-Carlton. I was sitting there having a huge dala of coffee and just like pouring it directly into my mouth, basically, because I love it so much. And Adam comes up to me and says, "Are you Lucien? I listen to your podcast all the time. I just wanted to introduce myself." It was one of the first times I've ever been recognized in public for the podcast. Started speaking with him. This was months ago now, but he was there essentially to work on a partnership with Sanabel. Last week, his venture capital firm, Redesign Health, signed a partnership with Sanabel Venture Studio to create an accelerator program here in Saudi Arabia. And I mention it especially because it's in the healthcare innovation space, which is new here in Saudi Arabia. From a venture standpoint, not a lot going on, a lot of sort of dual track stuff and cross-border stuff, but it's really exciting. He's sort of at the ground floor of this. So just congratulations to Adam. I know he's a listener. So a little shout out there. The other shout out is to my very dear friend, Abdelaziz Al-Anazi, Dr. Abdelaziz Al-Anazi, who received a patent from the WIPO on PFAS particles, which is the really nasty stuff that is going into all of our water and food these days. And his patent has been granted after 5 years of research for technology to remove it. And I'm told that it is highly sought after now by global companies seeking access to it. So look at that. Shout outs at the beginning. I don't know if this is going to be a norm, but it's just good to not forget 2 really good people that are deserving of a special mention. So congrats.
Congratulations. Congratulations to both. And how did it feel being recognized? Did you feel like a celebrity?
Dude, I mean, are we not celebrities? No, it's just, so you get this too. When people listen to the show and you get feedback on it, it's kind of awesome. But to get somebody to recognize you and be like, "Hey, are you this guy?" And you're like, "Yes, what's up? Are you the tax man?" Because if you are involved in taxes, then no, you're thinking of somebody else. But yeah, it was cool. Yeah, and a really great guy. And he really invested in the market here. So it's nice to see something come out of this. Let's get to that interview with Ghada. It's super fun and awesome. She's got great vibes, by the way. She's like one of my favorite people to talk to on the show for sure.
She's so much fun. I love Ghada. It's always a pleasure to have her on the show.
Enjoy.
We are joined today by our recurring guest, Ghada AlMuhanna is with us today to talk about the Riyadh Metro. So great to have you on the show again. We've missed you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, as always. I'm always waiting for this moment, by the way. I count the time when this moment happens again, because I enjoy this podcast a lot.
We enjoy having you on. Yeah. Yes. It is. We have the best time talking to you about
You're
things.
You're our favorite,
so.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, I know that we have fights about kabsa and like food from Lucien and Hanaa, but like it's all love here, you know?
Absolutely. Those are my favorite fights to have, actually. So
food fights, yeah.
Food fights, yeah. So we're talking Riyadh Metro today. We've all ridden on the Metro. It's been open about 2 months now, almost 2 months. Opened up December 1st with the blue, yellow, and purple lines, and then they rolled out the red and green lines, and now the orange line is available. So, gotta tell us like about your experiences riding the metro and where you went and what you saw and how was it?
Look, I was so excited. I was so psyched to get on this metro that when I arrived in Riyadh, I turned to my husband and I was like, we're going home by metro. So that was the first time we took the metro, was when we landed to the airport, and then we just took the yellow line to Uthman bin Affan, and then we just ordered an Uber from there because my house doesn't get to that. Like, the metro doesn't pass my house. But it was super exciting and just super fun to get on it. I got very emotional. I don't know about you, Hannah. I got just very emotional getting on the metro because I'm like, I mean, Riyadh is the city I was born and raised in, and I was like, I never thought I would see this day that we would get a metro.
So I wasn't super emotional because I actually, I didn't spend a lot of time in Riyadh growing up. I was always in the Eastern Province. I was emotional in the sense that I was very excited. Ever since I started traveling to Riyadh for work, I have been in metro construction traffic. So I didn't even start going to Riyadh until kind of, basically when they broke ground. And so it was amazing that we're past that phase now, right? The construction's over and now the metro is here. So that's kind of my memory of it, which is pretty cool. But I was also just fascinated by how easy it was.
Oh, it's super easy. Yeah. Everything is like electronic, and you can talk to the people that are there, but you don't have to, which was so nice. It's like the self-discovery kind of thing, which I really enjoyed when I took it the first time with my husband. The second time I took it was with you, Hannah. So it was so fun.
That was so much fun.
We had so much fun. Yes.
Where did you guys go? Like, what? I didn't hear about this. Where'd you go? That's awesome.
We wanted to surprise everyone, so we took the STC station and we went to Kaft from there. So it was what, the green line and then the blue line.
Yeah,
we
switched.
Yeah,
was it
we
green?
Switched.
Yeah,
I think it was green.
There was yellow.
Yellow is the airport line.
Yeah.
Is it? Wait, let me check. I have the app on my phone. So.
You guys have the app? Yeah.
I also
you
have
need
the
to
app.
have the app.
And I love the name of the app. It's called Derb, which means like your way. So it's
like
a
route.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the 5 ways you can pay. Like, still in the US, like most metros have like, you get a card and then, or like you have to buy the card, fill up the card. Like, there still is that here, but you can also just use like tap to pay with Apple Pay on your phone.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have like a card, you just like walk in. It's so seamless. And you mentioned the whole thing is like automated, but like even the conductor, there's like no conductor. So you can like stand in front of the train, which is such a cool way to see like train ride. And my kids like thought that was the coolest thing. They both cried when we got off. We went to Kaft and they were like, what are you talking about? Like, we're on the train. This is the attraction. I just thought that was like so awesome to see. Like, I've never seen that before.
It's pretty awesome. It's to be very honest, it's pretty transformative for Riyadh as a city. Like, many people don't think about metros that much, but like personally for me, when the lines were first announced, I was like, this is going to socially change the city in ways people do not understand, like providing a new public space for people to kind of interact in, to see kind of a diverse amount of people, and to kind of like, I don't know, just witness the lives of others, like when I go on the metro line in Berlin, I take it all the time. I see the weirdest things sometimes, but also I see like I have really great human interactions sometimes on the metro. And so when the lines were announced, I was like, this is going to like escalate the social interactions in the city, And so there's so much excitement behind that, in my mind, at least.
I love that you're mentioning that because it's true. And so obviously I'm Saudi, I grew up there, but I know a lot of people that have moved to Saudi. And Lucien, you might be able to reflect on this. And it's hard to meet people if you're not part of a group already. And so opening up a space like this really does create an opportunity for people to interact in a new space that is not a family space or, just a really open public space like a supermarket or a mall. You're in a closed kind of space. And so I do feel like there is an opportunity to talk to people. I've been on the tube here in London so many times where the entire train cabin or car or whatever, everybody is talking to each other and we're all laughing about something that happened with somebody that just got off or just got on or whatever. And it's like no other interaction. I love it.
You reminded me of the video that I sent you. So I sent Hannah a video of like an incident that happened in the metro where like an older woman and her worker, or like someone who's working in the house at least, they were going to ride the metro together, but then the woman apparently rode the metro without her. And so the person that's filming is laughing because all the men were saying, calm down, it's fine, she's not going to disappear. And the woman is like, oh, the train is gone, like this, like she's lost, I don't know how to get back to her. And they were all just talking to this old woman, just calming her down. So definitely these kind of interactions will increase. Like you're already seeing all these memes. Like I love memes, and you're already seeing all these memes making fun of each line and what type of people you would see on each and every line. You have like this, now you have a stereotypes of the lines, which is really fascinating to watch.
You're going to need to walk us through these. You're going to need to walk us through the stereotypes
I'm not
and the lines.
Professional of all the stereotypes, but what I can tell you is that everyone is consistent about the blue line being the business line. So being that line that if you get on there, you will see Saudi men in bishts, you will see Europeans or Westerners generally in like suits. You'll see like Asians also in suits. So like that is the business line. And so most of the videos that come out on TikTok or whatever application that makes fun of the lines, they act like that. Like they would dress up in suits or bishts and then they would act it out being like, oh yeah, I'm going to Kaft. Like, do you not know what Kaft is and stuff like that? So it's fascinating. I mean, and then you have another line called the Swedi where people are basically like dressed up, very average Riyadh person, like not super, like very local Riyadh. That's how I would put it, So that line, I think it was the purple line, that's where you see those type of people. And I mean, my favorite kind of videos is always just like a person in a metro that's like, or in a station that's like in the middle, and then looking at the signs, and then it would say like Kaft, and it would play this kind of business, like sort of like jazz waiting kind of music, and then it would turn to the other side that would say Dar al-Bayda or something like that, and it would say, and it would play like the traditional Saudi drums music. So it's like two different worlds.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So the fact that it's already creating kind of like a subculture in the internet, like, or like in the Saudi society at least, is fascinating to watch. And I mean, the memes of Ramadan are coming out. So Ramadan on the metro, here, you heard it here first, will be very interesting.
It's going to be lit.
It's going to be fire. People will ask each other, what meals have you made? Are you late for like the break of fast? People will like say, I missed the line. It's like, I had to start my I had to break my fast in the metro.
Yeah, you're going to have people handing out water and
like
dates on the metro.
Definitely. So it will be a lot more social. And the thing is, like, and I was thinking that last time, the stations are huge. So you will definitely have events happening there as well, like you will definitely 100% see a local band playing there at some point. That's how I see it, at least. Like some sort of like entertainment interaction kind of thing at these stations.
Yeah, so like here in the stations, you have spots for buskers, like specific spots where, this is an area you have to like kind of pre-book it. I wonder what kind of music or entertainment you see eventually happening at the different stations.
I mean, Foundation Day is coming up. So I could definitely see traditional drums being like played either at CAFT or like at the SDC station is huge, you know? So I think they could play there definitely. I just see them activating these spaces, just like there's this event called Noor Riyadh, which is like this light event that happens every year at the end of December. So I can definitely where they try to activate basically locations in Riyadh. So I can definitely see the same kind of approach being taken towards the metro stations. So like, okay, we're dedicating certain stations for certain things. I mean, the Kaft station, you know, you saw already some art installations. So we will definitely see performances in the coming days. That's how I see it.
Yeah, plus the National Museum station just opened. That's the second largest. And, you know, it makes sense what you were talking about with the Blue Line, right? Because that runs from Sab Bank, like, to downtown. And so it's like that straight line shot of, like, hitting Kaft and then, like, all the sort of banks and, you know, corporates that are downtown. That's so interesting. I can't wait to, like, look this up on, like, Instagram and, like, see some of these memes. I think it's going to be, like, awesome.
I'll send them to you. You'll find it hilarious. Yeah,
send them. The other thing that is striking about the Metro is how inexpensive it is. And, like, I mean, it's basically $1 to get on the train for, like, 3 hours. So or maybe 2 hours. But it's, like, very inexpensive. I think the move there is to try to get people comfortable with using it and not be cost prohibitive, because I mean, it's supposed to be democratizing, right? A cheap way to get around that is faster than traffic.
I mean, definitely the just to go back to your point about the lower costs, you have to consider that this is a very private society. And the society is really developing forward, and for you to you don't want to push society into something that they don't want to do. You want to offer them the option, and then, you know, people talk amongst each other, and then they start to encourage one another to actually take these steps forward. I will explicitly just talk about Riyadh because I grew up there. We are a very private city. We have our own communities. We barely interact with other communities, but we do. It's not that we don't. We do, but it's like you have these spaces, you know, these private spaces, and public space really wasn't a thing until Vision 2030. Once that entered and once that became like a thing that is obviously going to stay, people started really kind of meeting one another in these spaces. So like, for example, Boulevard, when it opened up, that was a huge space for people to gather in. That was not a mall. That was not like a shopping center or like a place with a bunch of restaurants. That was like a location that had events and restaurants and other stuff, but it was like a meeting point for people, you know? Now you have something that will create more intimate relationships, which is the Metro, because you're not just in a public space, you're in a confined public space. So you will definitely start hearing other people's stories. You will start looking at people more closely, you know, because in Boulevard, you have that space, but you can definitely stand at a distance and look at people, you know, you can still stay kind of private in your public space. But in the Metro, there's not really much privacy, you know? And so I genuinely do believe that they priced it at that point to really just slowly encourage people to move from using their cars, which are very intimate private spaces, to metros, which are intimate public spaces. So yeah, I definitely see, like, let me put it this way, a change of interaction amongst people, not just Saudis, but also non-Saudis, you know? Like, so many Saudis, especially those that do not speak English or any other languages, they are shy and do not want to interact with non-Saudis most of the time, you know? So in these spaces, they will also be forced to kind of like interact with other people, or at least see them in a way, you know? So it will definitely change the way the city thinks, the way the newer generations, you know, that are going to be born in the next few years, they will be born within a city that has a metro line. I know that sounds ridiculous, you know, when you say it this way, but as someone who like I was born at a time Riyadh was so tiny, and I still always think about it. You know, my house used to be at the corners of Riyadh. Now it's like in the middle of Riyadh because of this like boom of growth, you know. So definitely when you raise newer generations with the idea, like, you know, you have a metro line, your city is huge, you're like, you have so many nationalities and so many communities, you're basically kind of giving them a footing, basically, where they understand they're in a global city instead of just it being local to Saudi, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like how this is going to affect real estate in Saudi. It was something that I was like, I wanted to ride the metro first to really think about, because if it's really, really good and very fast and convenient, then like it makes sense for people to start looking at homes that are near metro stops or future metro stops, with new ones coming online now. They're really trying to build the map out in that respect. I mean, so it has that kind of like changing the city like element, right? I mean, like people will look at two comparable homes. If one's next to the metro and they work near a metro, that is a huge advantage. And so, you know, it's just interesting to think about like how it might change like Riyadh as a city in that way.
I mean, it definitely does change the structure of the city. And obviously, in terms of urban planning, you know, you have these new mega projects that are going to come forward in the next few years. Obviously, there will always be new projects, you know, it always makes me laugh when people think that's it, you know, but there will always be new projects. And obviously, the metro will be now an important component when one considers these new projects. So, like, okay, where do I place it? How do I make movement easier for people? How do I not overwhelm the metro? You know, like for example, in Berlin, we sometimes have the issue of a certain line being overwhelmed with people because it just passes through the most important neighborhoods, you know? Will Riyadh go through something similar? I can definitely see that, but it's also just a matter of, okay, we have the blessing that we are still kind of, we can shift things, you know? So if I have a new project, I don't necessarily need to do all these, like, I don't need to go through all the difficulties that I basically went through for the past 15 years. I just have these lines. I can either extend them or I can either build one new line in a newer area that hasn't really been touched, you know? So definitely it will affect the city.
I think another thing to really consider, again, like, so living in a city that is very well connected by the underground, there are neighborhoods that are not well connected by design, because those are very expensive neighborhoods where people want to stay separate and exclusive. And I think, I mean, I know that that's kind of similar, like in DC, like Georgetown's harder to get to, right? Because again, you want it to kind of, so it's old, but also a little bit separate. There are neighborhoods here where it's much harder to get to on the tube, and you'd need to drive or walk quite a distance when you get off. And I wonder, I mean, these are dynamics that unless you actually have public transportation networks that people use a lot, you don't really think about these things. But I know them because I've lived in this city now for 10 years. I've lived here in the past as well. And you start to hear these conversations and you really start to see those neighborhoods, especially if you visit them, how different they look from other ones. And there's again, Seattle's another place where I hear this conversation happening where, you know, there's the East Side, which is a more kind of suburb of Seattle. People don't want the Seattle light rail to come to the East Side because they don't want the people in Seattle riding over and then like making the beautiful suburban kind of paradise look more diverse, different, whatever, more crime, things like that. And I do think that now that there is a more vibrant, active public transport network in Riyadh, these are conversations we're probably going to hear a little bit more of, I think.
I mean, yes and no in a way, because the thing is, the way Riyadh is structured as a city, it's very fascinating. I would have agreed if we were talking about pre-Vision 2030. If we're talking about post-Vision 2030, people move where their jobs are. You know, so I know so many people that used to live in the east of Riyadh that moved now the north of Riyadh because most of the projects are there. regardless of their income, regardless of the wealth that they have. You see people flocking to these areas because it's just closer to their work, and so it would mean an easier commute for them. You also have certain areas in Riyadh that is kind of like becoming outdated, or like the government kind of wants to build a new location there, so they're kind of buying out the houses. In terms of, for me personally, I do see the intention of Riyadh is really to mix the city up. So we won't have really, like, we will have some locations that are dedicated to like certain classes of people, and you will be able to see that obviously and very clearly. But I don't think that's like a designed intention, I do think that it's kind of happening naturally, and the priority that people do have is about their jobs mostly than anything else.
It's interesting to think about how this metro impacts youth and like youth mobility as well. Like when I got on for the first time, I had a dinner, like it was downtown, and my buddy I had dinner with lived near me in Hittin and was like, oh, I'm taking the metro home, but my car is at the SAB station. You should come, like ride it for the first time. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And we get on, and there's a lot of, not a lot of, but I mean a noticeable amount of younger kids, both boys and girls, that were probably under 16, so probably can't drive or aren't allowed to drive. And that's that sort of sweet spot age, like 12 to 16, where your parents are saying you can go out and hang out with your friends and go around. You could probably take Uber, but they're probably excited about the fact that they can kind of get together, get on a train and go to a different part of the city and come back and do it completely safely. And it's just interesting to think about because, Riyadh and then Saudi Arabia broadly, it's a much younger population. There's a lot of, kids that are like, this is sweet. I can go to Boulevard. I can go all over the place I want, like anywhere I want, really. And that was like really cool to see for me because I was like, oh yeah, you guys probably couldn't get around very easily before this thing came on. So it's super cool.
The amount 100%. Of money I would have paid
right?
to have that freedom of movement, to not be reliant on a driver. This is before women being able to drive, so to not rely on a driver, and then it's cool to be able to drive, but it's still, I have so many friends of mine that are like, even if when we got our licenses, we were like, we're not going into the traffic of Riyadh. Like, it's ridiculous. I'm not staying in traffic for an hour and a half, 2 hours just to get to a location. So yeah, definitely. And I mean, think about it also this way, you have young people who are going to interact with each other, to like the genders, basically. What's going to happen? How are relationships going to form? How is this going to impact the society on a larger scale? You still have a huge portion of the society that's pretty conservative. How will they carry on these traditions that they want to carry on? And also you have a portion of society that's pretty liberal. So how are they going to also behave on these lines? It's a fascinating social experiment. Like, I've been just raving about this with people that I know, and I'm telling them, like, you have no idea the social experiments that are happening on this line, like from terms of content creation. So like, what kind of content are you creating and saying, the lines represent what the spirit of a city is. So what are they forming? How are they designing the spirit of the city? That's the first thing. Second thing is, how is it changing people's minds and mentalities? You definitely, like, the amount of times I've seen stuff in Berlin, where I come back home and I'm just like, what did I see? And I have to talk to someone about it. So what's going to happen in Riyadh on one of the lines that makes people do that? And it actually has, because there was a video that went viral of a man who witnessed two young men verbally fighting with each other on the line, and then he interrupted them and he gave them like religious advice, and it was very heartwarming to watch because, it's kind of like, yeah, that's something I know that's in my culture, but the way he did it would never be accepted. Like, for example, in Berlin, this kind of behavior would never be accepted, or people would just make fun of this man for quoting like verses of the Quran, or like do something like in terms of like, let's say his religious expression. Whereas in Saudi, it's a very accepted thing. So that the community on the metro allowed him to speak that, and the two young men listened to him, and then they thanked him. They shook hands. and their fight was over. It was a fascinating video to watch. So definitely these things are things that one has to think about when considering the metro and its effects.
Yeah, I think what I love about that is that this is a window into Saudi society that other people can now see that are visiting. So there's so many things about the vision that have changed the nature of Saudi Arabia. Getting rid of family section, single section in restaurants and cafes. So now you do have more mixing happening. Also, the women driving, the young population has been there. Obviously, 60% of the population is under 30. So, and that's just growing as well. So I think what's interesting is that now you have all these people coming to Saudi for the first time, the tourism opening up, people coming to work, and there are spaces where they can really engage with other people. Whereas if we opened up our borders in the past in this way, it still is quite isolating. So it's nice that there is that mixing that is happening and that this is a space for it to happen. And like you said, there are cultural kind of nuances, things that are going to be really different in the way people interact publicly than other parts of the world. And now people, again, can see that happening in another venue that is a very functional one. So, yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Ghada, you mentioned the T word earlier, traffic. And I think it's what a lot of people kind of expected about the metro is like it launches and then traffic goes to nothing. And obviously that's, a little bit of a stretch, right? Because even in the biggest cities in the world, like you still have metros, but you also have traffic. But, anecdotally, it does seem slightly better. I mean, if you're like going east to west or west to east at 4 or 5 p.m., no bueno. But like you can kind of see, I mean, it just has to be that way, right? If these trains are getting more and more packed, therefore there are fewer people on the roads. And in your opinion, do you think that's going to continue? Or do you think we've like already experienced a kind of traffic alleviation of the metro, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. What do you expect of a city that's over 8 million people? Like it's going to get trafficked. It's going to congestion is never going away. It's just part of belonging to a huge and big city. What other thing can you do? Not much. But what you can offer is different forms of transportation. And that's what Riyadh was missing for a very long time. The amount of people I know that were that moved back from New York or moved back from London or any of these big cities, they always would say, oh, I miss biking, I miss walking, I miss using the metro, I miss getting to a location through another type of transportation other than cars. Because cars, as much as they give you space to travel, as dangerous as they are at times, there was a time in Saudi where the number 2 reason of death was car accidents. And it was I think in the early 2000s up until the 2010s, that was the cause of death, is just getting into a car accident. So obviously these statistics will be the ones that will change slightly, I think. Otherwise, I think it's pretty naive when people say, well, the traffic hasn't changed. No, obviously it won't change, You have people coming out from different cities. It's not just Riyadh people that are driving. It's people that are coming from Khubar, from Bahrain, from the Emirates, from Qatar, with their cars, And you see their license plates in the city. So don't be surprised by that. That's how I see it, at least.
Thank you so much, Ghada.
I always love being included. So I love coming onto the show, so no worries.
Let's get to the news. Saudi Aramco and Ma'aden are two of the largest companies in Saudi Arabia, and they are doing a JV, a mining joint venture in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is really cool. Of course, this week in Saudi Arabia, you had the Future Minerals Forum in the kingdom, really big event, one of those events where they have billboards for it. So it was really quite a large show. The deal is non-binding at this time, which envisions the formation of a minerals exploration and mining joint venture in Saudi Arabia, and the proposed JV would focus on energy transition minerals, a subject of this podcast that we've discussed a few times in the past, including extracting lithium from high concentration deposits and advancing cost-effective direct lithium extraction, DLE, technologies, for those who don't know that term. Commercial lithium production, they are targeting 2027 for this, which is just in 2 years. And that would be quite a fast ramp up for them. But, these, again, Ma'aden is sort of the mining and minerals focused company, state owned in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Aramco is more in energy and petrochemicals. So the JV really brings together two areas of expertise to focus on the mining sector, but it is brand new for Aramco. This is new uncharted territory for Saudi Aramco, which boasts very sprawling campuses, offices, and everything in the eastern province, where my co-host is from and lives. The deal would seek to unlock the potential of the kingdom's high-value mineral resources, according to a press release, with the aim of helping to meet the growing demand for lithium and other transition minerals, both domestically and globally. And the JV is expected to further harness natural resources utilizing a wealth of subsurface data, as well as emerging technologies to advance the kingdom's economic diversification and energy ambitions. So quite a collab, pretty cool, big announcement just in the beginning of 2025.
There's significant potential to extract energy transition minerals in the kingdom. For example, as part of the operations, Aramco has identified several areas with a high lithium concentration. And so this JV really is expected to benefit from Aramco's expertise in operations. They are industry leading in drilling, as well as they have 90 years of geological data. And Aramco is an incredibly sophisticated company with really, really high standards of health and safety. They do it more efficiently than anyone else in the world. And so I think that this is definitely a great opportunity. And as you said, Saudi Arabia is really shaking up the kind of minerals world. Just in kind of the at the end of the Future Minerals Forum, which is an annual event, you had $28.5 billion worth of deals signed, with countries from around the world. It really is, an event that brought together people from everywhere. The UK is about to sign a critical minerals partnership with Saudi. It's really the future of energy. And I think that this JV just illustrates how important it is to kind of bring together the expertise that already exists within the country, looking forward into the kind of future of energy and the economy within the kingdom.
Fits a lot of themes, right? We're talking about diversification of the economy. The mining sector has been relatively unexplored. The Arabian Shield, these other areas of Saudi Arabia that are rich in minerals. And honestly, until the last few years, they didn't even really know for sure what was there. You have to do exploration. You have to figure out what might be found where. That's a completely separate phase of the industry. And as it matures here, you have Saudi Arabia investing in this with the goal of having it be a new source of wealth for the kingdom to tap into. Why not do it? The other theme, of course, is collaboration between, high-level ministries and ministers. And as you mentioned, you can't say enough good things about Saudi Aramco, including that they have several venture capital arms and technology investment arms that are doing deals in related spaces as part of their diversification strategy, which they have. So it's very new Saudi to see something like this, to see the potential of collaboration. So love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it always, it brings back memories. My late father-in-law was the head of exploration and a geologist. And so whenever I think about kind of the new frontiers of energy, I wish he was around because I think he would be super excited about this. So just remembering him, Allah yarhamah. So I'm going to move on and think about whether or not you're looking to expand your art collection.
I am always interested in exceptional pieces that stimulate the brain and mind. Please
Are
go
you?
on. Yeah, totally.
So
dude.
this piece of news reminded me a lot of the conversation that we had with the CEO of the Visual Arts Commission, Dina Amin, recently, because the first Sotheby's auction is now scheduled to take place in Riyadh, in Diriyah actually, the UNESCO protected historical city, on February 8th. The title of the auction is Origins. So it's going to span the timeline of Western art history, kind of with Impressionists, Surrealism, and modern art. Some of the artists that were mentioned are Magritte, Pablo Picasso, Andy Warhol, Damien Hirst. Super cool. They're also auctioning luxury collectibles, including watches, rare cars, handbags. Also, was mentioned that they're going to be auctioning a basketball jersey that Michael Jordan wore during his final season with the Chicago Bulls, which is estimated to go for up to $1.2 million. This is going to be the first international auction in Saudi Arabia's history. And actually, Sotheby's is set to open an outpost in El Faisaliya Tower, which, you know, El Faisaliya Tower is that Saudi skyscraper that was designed by the legendary Norman Foster, symbol of Riyadh, really. So they're auctioning some Western art, but also leading Arab artists. You have Syrian modern artist Louay Kayali's masterpiece called Then What, which is estimated to go for between $500,000 and $700,000 US, maybe expected even to achieve an auction record. And of course, no art auction in Saudi Arabia would be complete without also work by Saudi artist Ahmed Matlar. So this is kind of cool.
Super cool. Can't wait to tell my wife that we're putting our Riyadh home purchase on hold so that I can acquire a basketball jersey by MJ, who is a personal favorite of mine. Grew up watching him. I will be there with my checkbook, of course. This is so cool. Perfect place to hold it is Diriyah, the city of Earth. And gosh, there's so much happening there now. I mean, there's new stores opening up in Bujeri Terrace. They're doing so much to get that city up and running. I mean, one thing that people notice here when they come and visit Riyadh is the sheer number of cranes that are happening in Diriyah, that are working on Diriyah to build out the Beverly Hills of Riyadh. And it's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know that Sotheby's actually just announced a $1 billion investment with Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund. So the fact that they're also now holding an auction in Saudi shows that maybe people who are investing in art live in different countries than traditionally, because, you know, the biggest art market's really in the US. And you have more and more interest, obviously, in the region. So this is kind of exciting. Well done to Dina for building out an ecosystem where people are now more and more interested in very high quality luxury art.
If you haven't listened to that conversation or watched it, Dina is amazing. They found the right person for that incredible new job they created in 2020. Very cool. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the economy of Saudi Arabia. It's something we talk about a ton on this show. And, you know, being at the beginning of the year, 2025, the year of our Lord, we do have some new economic data coming out on Saudi Arabia and the region as a whole. It's not good, but it's also not bad. The IMF on Friday lowered its growth forecast for the Middle East and North Africa this year. Womp womp. The lowered forecast for the region is largely due to a slowdown in Saudi Arabia's economy due to OPEC plus production cuts. The broader MENA economy is projected to grow 3.5% this year, and that's about half a percentage point down from its October update. Saudi Arabia, specifically the largest economy in the Arab world, and it just so happens OPEC's top producer, is forecast to grow by 3.3% in 2025, a downward revision of 1.3 percentage points, quite significant. Its economy is projected to grow 4.1% in 2026, which is down by 0.3 percentage points from the fund's October forecast. And as I mentioned, largely accounting for this revision is the OPEC Plus voluntary production cuts. 8 members of the OPEC Plus oil producers group agreed in December to extend their voluntary cuts of 2.2 million barrels per day of crude production until March this year, and then gradually phasing those cuts out until the end of December 2026. So they're cutting oil production. That affects the bottom line pretty simple to see and understand there. And so that is why you have this revision from the IMF driving much of the world's economic activity. It should be mentioned, USA, baby, GDP is set to pick up by 2.7% in 2025, which is half a point higher than the previous IMF forecast. So, grain of salt here because nobody has a crystal ball, but just interesting. It does highlight the fact that Saudi Arabia is transitioning away from its dependence or its reliance on oil for GDP growth. We are mid-transition. It's not done yet. So oil markets do have a tremendous effect on the economy here. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's always important to kind of keep an eye on what's happening with the economy, especially considering that we are talking about diversification, new industries, and things changing. But, there are realities that are difficult to deny when you do still rely quite heavily on oil and supporting industries. In Saudi, if there is a cut, that will affect the bottom line. But I think that it's still quite healthy, and it is not really something to be that concerned about at the moment.
I think if you're a Saudi authority, you look just as closely as the development of non-oil GDP, which is growing significantly. That's the number that really matters in the long term. I mean, it all matters because it's all money, but I mean, that you need to see that continue to grow, and that has grown, if not outperformed growth recently. So there you go.
Yeah. And you know what? It's interesting because our news is kind of all over the place today. A little bit of minerals, going back to art, coming then to the economy. And now let's go into sports again, which we talked quite a bit about in our intro today.
See, I didn't bring up sports. I didn't bring it up. You brought it up.
No, it's me. I'm bringing it up. We are talking Dakar now because the 2025 Dakar Rally concluded with a win for a Saudi. Yazid Rajhi just won the title, which is super exciting. That's never happened before for somebody to win. The first Saudi to win
Dakar.
Soil.
It's insane.
So basically, Dakar is an off-road endurance event. It moved to Saudi in 2020 after a decade in South America. It originally was held between Paris and the Senegalese capital, Dakar. So in the 2025 race, Rajhi finished the 12-stage rally 4 minutes and 33 seconds ahead of his closest competitor. So the Dakar Rally is often referred to as one of the toughest motorsport event in the world. The thrilling competition in Saudi Arabia takes racers across the empty quarter, and it kind of basically pushed competitors to their limits again. Across the deserts, rocky terrain, unpredictable weather conditions. Rajhi, who is 43 years old, had previously recorded a best finish of third in 2022. And his passion for motorsports is something that people in Saudi are quite aware of. It's deep-rooted. He started competing in local rallies in 2007 across the Middle East, and basically then made the leap into international level rallying in 2014. He said after he won, for sure, we made a lot of records today, the first Saudi driver to win, and also in the last 25 years, no private team beat a factory team, but we did it this time. End quote. Congrats to Yazid and to Saudi Arabia.
It is my understanding as well that Yazid is a bit of a heartthrob here, right? I mean, this only elevates his status, of course, because he's now a Dakar champion. Dakar Rally is not for the faint of heart. Often people, or many times people have died in this race. It's super dangerous or have been severely injured. I believe it was 2 years ago that somebody died here in Saudi Arabia in the race. I mean, it's just so dangerous because it essentially is a race across a large terrain and there are no roads. So take the wrong turn, you're off a cliff, that's it. And so it's really a sport that is inspirational in that way because it's so badass that, you really have to have the chutzpah to do it. And so congrats to Yazid and all of Saudi Arabia it's pretty remarkable, right, that a Saudi has won this race. I mean, the home territory angle doesn't matter because, it's a very competitive race. And yeah, great history to this race as well. I think the original was from France to Dakar. It was like a really long race kind of thing. Really just like the super hard asses of sport and racing are doing this thing. It's remarkable. Tell me more about Yazid, if you would.
I don't know that much. I wanted to say congratulations also to a relative of mine who did compete. He did not make it to the end, but Mishal Ghanem was also at Dakar, and I love following his stories because he does so many extreme sports, and I find him incredibly inspirational in that way. So a shout out to Mishal for competing in Dakar again. He has competed in the past as well. So I think, what Yazid Rajhi, same family as Rajhi Bank. You know, he's been doing this. I remember when I was managing the corporate social responsibility program of youth empowerment for Rawabi back in the early, or kind of like, the 2010s. We really wanted to get Yazid come and speak because we thought that he would draw in a really big crowd of both young men and young women. And we were trying to inspire people to think about alternative career routes and things. So I remember his name coming up several times by kind of people when we were asking, like, who would you like to have come and speak? Yazid Rajhi's name came up quite a bit. It was kind of a niche back then to be, a rally driver. He didn't end up coming to our event, but that did put him on the map for me. I didn't know who he was before then.
Yeah, he may be the first billionaire or close to it to win this race too. So congrats to billionaires all around for your huge accomplishment. But, incredibly accomplished person.
Don't take it away.
Jokes aside, incredibly accomplished businessman, has been with the Al Rajhi group since 1998. So he's been doing this his whole life. And we were talking a little bit about it beforehand, and he still works. He's not one of these billionaires that just only races cars, but this is his passion. And anytime you see somebody's passion play out into a victory, it always makes for the best story. So this is super cool. And congrats to him. And his profile is definitely going to be elevated after this win, because this is the biggest race of the year when it comes to this style of really extreme, very dangerous and super cool racing. So his first win was in 2008. So he's been doing this for quite a while. His first race was in 2007. Didn't take him long to make it to the winner's circle. And he can add the 2025 Dakar Rally to his, I would imagine, extremely large room where he hosts his trophies here in Riyadh. I'm just going out on a limb there, but it's really super cool to see him win this. Mabruk. Does this count as your shout out too? You're going to do a shout out to Yazid? Let's get him on the show.
No, I did a shout out to Mishal, but
that's right. Okay, yeah.
Because Mishal is awesome and does some really, really cool extreme sports as well. And I kind of followed him throughout the years. He's again, as I mentioned, a relative of mine, and so I've known him my whole life, and I just think that he does incredibly exciting things. And winning is awesome, of course, but just competing in Dakar to me is a huge, huge feat in and of itself. Like, it is a very, very scary thing, and I think you need to be sensible and you need to know your limits. And if you're not going to make it, I think it's probably better to take care of yourself, right? Like, Michel has a few kids. He's an important guy at home as well. So I'm just like, alhamdulillah ala salamta. I'm really happy that he's well, even if he did still opt for the crazy Dakar race.
Yeah, this is like the only sport in the world, I think, where we say winning. Like, how I feel about winning, love to win, but like winning kind of doesn't matter. I could not do one day of this. Driving off-road for me driving as a Hawaja here in Riyadh is already like its own Dakar rally in a way. A very different style of driving, but what this is just incredible, right? And there's different sort of categories. So there's motorcycles, which I really don't understand. And then there are cars and other types of vehicles. I would want to be in one of those like tank things that has like the airbags on the side. So if you flip off a cliff, in the Nafud desert or whatever, you got some protection, but that's not the deal here. And so it's done in stages, so you can win stages, kind of like the Tour de France, but like you can win it all. He won it all, and it's kind of like hero status now. billionaire like Dakar winner is pretty awesome. A movie to be made for sure in the future, which is cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations. On that very happy note, we put a bow on episode 41. Dr. Hanaa, see you soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.